Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us this week on the Encouragers United podcast. And I have a wonderful, wonderful good friend from Oklahoma, the great state of Oklahoma. Shonda, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
We
Thank you
sure
very
are.
much.
Shonda, you're a busy woman. You've got a book out on Amazon. It's called ShoStopper, where you
Mhm,
coach folks in creating video. And then you've
mhm,
got your One Woman Show, spelled WON, the One Woman
mhm,
Show. I'm so intrigued by that. The
mhm,
title of your show right now is called Me, Myself, and Why. I love it.
mhm,
You have an active coaching career. You're a public speaker, a keynote speaker, of course, and you are busy, but you are a creative. And so the first question I
mhm.
have for you here is really, how do pastors and leaders, what do we need to understand about creative people?
You really need to understand that word. It's kind of overused, but when you really get to the definition of what a creative person is, a creativity needs freedom. And sometimes that's not found all the time in Christianity or in churches. I love church, so do not hold anything I say against me. That's number one. That's my claim right there. But a lot of times Christianity, sometimes people want Christianity in their small box that they can understand. And creative people ask the questions or get you to ask the questions and make you see it in a different way. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable. So when you're dealing with the creative person, it's best to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if you allow them that freedom, they're going to really open your eyes to a lot of things that were never that have not been considered. So being creative is it's freedom for real. Like sometimes we throw that word around, like free in Christ, free to be me, unique. Um, and a creative person can really test your knowledge if you allow them to. Honestly,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And
Mhm,
as a creative person who often pushes the limits, I can tell you I'm
mhm,
often looking for those boundaries, right? So tell us about your
mhm,
show, this one woman show. Tell us the impetus of how you got started and what's the
mhm,
essence of I'm assuming you do this show by yourself, right? It's one woman.
mhm,
But
mhm.
what is me,
Yes.
myself, and why?
Me, Myself, and Why was birthed out of a lot of questions that I allowed myself to ask God, despite being told, you don't question God. I know what people were trying to do with that, but one of the things that I love, that was just how someone described me, was like, you are like Jacob, you will get in there and wrestle with God. And I never thought of it that way, but it's like, I will ask why. I proudly say that I argue with God, knowing I'm going to lose, but I still go for the argument because I need to understand the why, because that keeps me on my path. If I know the why, that keeps me going. I just cannot. I know we're supposed to follow blindly, but there's some things that I just have to know why. And thank God I'm patient enough to wait. I don't get the answer right away, but it's like I know He's going to answer me eventually. So Me, Myself, and Why came. It's and the one woman show, it's basically a lot of biblical women a lot of women in the Bible that helped me to get the answers. Like I'll perform like the Shunammite woman, but I'll give it from a different perspective than I've ever heard before, because I can see a different perspective. There's a Hagar. Oh my gosh, like
Mm,
who thinks they can
yeah.
get help by Hagar? It's always been avoid being a Hagar, be a Sarah. But her perspective, it really, she named him the God who sees me.
Yeah.
And so it really helped me to see things from their point of view, to enter into their story. And I just basically tell their story from what I perceive to be their point of view and how they helped me. So it empowers other women and men come to my show as well. But yes, I do the show by myself, but my sister-in-law, she comes in and does a dance here and there because I need to go back and change clothes. So
Sure, yeah.
yeah, I have a lot of artistic ministry, come in, and like the dancers, and sometimes a singer. It just depends on what my needs are. You never get the same show twice. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And you know, we're going to give in the show notes some links back to that. And I've been on your website and I just love that concept. I really admire you for telling those stories in your own creative way and allowing
Mhm.
people to see those stories and your interpretation of them in your creativity. Um, but what do you think? I'm going to throw another question out at you here. Why do you believe that both the church and the world will lose out if we don't give space to Christians who are
Mhm.
artists and that creativity that they possess?
My quick answer, when I'm asked that question, is the church. If you don't allow the Christian, if you don't allow the creativity, the church loses out on a missionary, and the world loses out. No, no, no. Sorry. The church loses out on a visionary, and the world loses out on a missionary,
Yes.
because sometimes artists are in between two worlds. It's like, the church is like, you have to do it this way. The artist is like, I can't do it that way. And then they want to go to the world and it's like, no, I can't do it your way either. So it's like artists are kind of stuck in between sometimes. I mean, even musical artists, I've seen a young lady at my church, and she sang at my church, and then when she sang a secular song, like, the church would be like, you can't do that. And then she said, in the meantime, well, I've got to pay bills. So I saw, a lot of artists being stuck between two worlds. And it's like, not allowing that. It's like, who's going to minister to those people behind the scenes if we can't go into the secular world. Like, there's producers and directors. That's a mission within itself. That's what I always say. You're going out there, and it's like, to not allow, or to say we're not allowed to work with secular people in some religions. It really hinders a big mission field. And for the church, sometimes, like I said, artists will expand your vision, so, it's like, you got to allow a little bit of freedom. Now, I'm not crazy enough to believe that artists know it all and see it all. But if you just allow a little more, you could help us too. We need help too, knowing when we've gone too far. But if you say that we've gone too far every single time, it's like, no, I'm going to have to go out a little further. So,
Yeah, I think my experience with that is really in the musical area, like you mentioned, is that I think I'm
mhm,
probably known amongst my, parishioners and those that are part of the church, is that Charlie's kind of this guy that, you never quite know what's going to happen. And I don't mean to be that way. I think if you think about music, there's a way to sing a song because that's the way it was written. But then there's this license that we sometimes take, and sometimes that really bothers people, that we may play it in a different style, or we may do something a little bit different than what they're used to.
mhm,
And that's that
right.
creativity. That's what I'm searching for in my in my world, or in my aspect of this. How would you handle the situation when a critic comes to you and says, wait a second, that wasn't right, that's that witty worship or that creative Christianity thing? Talk to us how you face a critic that
Mhm,
comes back and says, cries foul.
mhm, mhm. My absolute best advice is prepare before, because you are going to get critics. That's just like you said, there's just some people that they're just not going to understand, they're not going to go for it, everyone's not going to get it. One of the things that I've done is prepare, and that's knowing my why am I doing this, asking the Lord, why me, why did you choose me, why am I doing this, who am I speaking to, honestly, because there have been a couple. I did a drama ministry in my church, and there was a couple of people that came into me, it's like, I didn't get it. And I'm like, then it wasn't for you. It's like, you have to just know that. You have to realize everyone's not going to love it. Everyone's not going to see what God has poured into you. You have to understand that, I mean, people didn't understand, everybody didn't understand Jesus, and everyone didn't love Jesus. So when you put it that way, and Jesus was a storyteller. So I found myself in the Bible. I said, oh, Jesus is a storyteller. Okay, I totally relate to that. This is my job. I explain things through parables. I explain things through story. And I found myself in the Bible. I got the why down, and I got the who am I speaking to, because sometimes it can look like I totally bombed. I mean, it's not always hand claps all the time, but there'll be that one person that grabs a hold of me in tears or who'll say, I get it. And that's just good enough for me. So you have to be able to look at your one person, if it's only one person that you're serving, and not be affected by maybe 10 that didn't like it. As long as you got to that one, that was your assignment that day. And that's, I've never gone wrong so far now. My husband might say I complain a little bit, but I still stick to the mission of, well, there was that one person and something changed in her and I have to be happy with that. That's just all there is to it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Knowing your why, and then really
Mm-hmm.
doing the hard work to know your audience and to realize why you're
Mm-hmm.
doing this presentation, what we're trying to accomplish. And because that's
Mm-hmm.
then how you say, if I know that I know what my why is, I'm settled with God that I was meant to be here. And then if a bunch of criticism comes, you say, well, you're criticizing God because God called me to do this, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little sidebar question. Talk to me now about your coaching career and how you help people with this knowledge, with this creativity and the why and what you've done, but you're helping people find their purpose, find their voice, and
Mm-hmm.
find their messaging
Mm-hmm.
inside them. And I see this parallel for you and your one woman show to interpret for people these stories. But how are you now using that and that experience in other people's lives as a keynote speaker, as a coach, as a person that comes along others and encourages them?
I always say, my biggest joy in coaching is that I'm able to be the person that I needed 10 to 15 years ago. And I just, the thought of finding me 10 years ago would have and had me walking side by side, like it's just phenomenal to me. I love the coaching industry. I love the explosion that it has taken on today too, because I remember praying for a mentor. I remember I live in a little town in Oklahoma and there was no, back 10 to 15 years ago, coaching was not a well-known word. And I remember just saying, I just need someone to help me learn how to do video. I did not know how to do video. I did not go to school for that. I remember, saying, how do I get it out of my head onto the stage? I remember asking, how do I get the confidence that I need to be able to accept God's calling? Like that is so monumental right there, just to say I'm the one that God called. Like I couldn't even say that. So I love being that person that can help, that can look and help other people to do those things. I always, I coined the phrase, the walking permission slip. And when people see me, it gives them permission to be authentic, to be themselves, to be who God has called them to be, not to be a version of what they think God wants. It's like I help you or help my clients with finding your true purpose in God, what God has designed you for, and seeing if, when to say no to things, when to say yes to things, what do they fit in your purpose. And I have just been so blessed with just giving people the tools to help them find their real purpose, not, some, our purpose is to fulfill the Great Commission. Okay, how? It's
Yep.
like that's just so cookie cutter, and it's in the Bible. I got it, but how specifically am I
Yeah.
supposed to? And like I was saying, even like finding Jesus was a storyteller. Yes, he was so much more, but that's my little section. That's my bit. That's what my primary thing. And I help you find your bit, your method, your tools, your way, your calling, and it's just so awe-inspiring to give people permission to do what God has called them to do. It's something I do not take lightly, and it's so exciting every day. I love
Oh,
it so
I
much.
echo that
Mhm,
too, sister. Coming alongside somebody, being an encourager. That's
mhm,
really what this podcast is all about. And I really appreciate that perspective that you are truly coming alongside someone and saying, no, yes, you can, and you will. I think that's
mhm,
so
mhm,
great too, that the
mhm,
observation you're making that Jesus gave us the Great Commission, but he didn't say how. He didn't say
mhm.
how. He just said go. And that's up to us. And
Yes.
that's the beauty of the
Mhm,
body of Christ. And so, and I
mhm,
love,
mhm,
maybe you could spin out a little bit the walking permission slip idea. So people meet you and
mhm,
they go, wait a minute. I think I could do that. Do you have a
mhm.
personal or maybe a specific example of that and how someone you've interacted with has said, Shonda, you set me free? Anything come to your
Mhm.
mind?
Well, mostly with the videos because I'm a Christian and I do a lot of 80s music video parables, parodies. And it's like, even using secular music to get the point across, because it's like secular music is something like some of us all grew up on. We know exactly what they're saying. It's like, oh, I instantly got that. And it's like, and then I make it funny. Oh my gosh, I remember asking God, I said, God, am I allowed to be funny? And he said, why not? I am. And I busted into laughter. And I remember one of my very first skits, it was Gone with the Wind. I did a parody of Gone with the Wind, but it was called Gone with the Sin. And I remember a lady came up to me afterwards and she says, I was laughing so hard that I stopped and asked God, am I allowed to laugh this hard in church? And he said, yes. And I'm like, this is supposed to be a place of joy. And it's like the fact that you stopped because you were laughing so hard. It's like I was laughing at something that was spiritual, and I gave her permission to laugh and experience that joy. And it was just those type of things really get to me. Even with my one woman show, I purposely do not do it in church because of that, because it's so much comedy in it. You get a spiritual lesson, but I always do it like in neutral zone. So it's like, oh, I'm allowed to laugh. It's like it
Right.
takes
Yeah.
away that from it. So it's like I just give permission for the joy, for to experience God in a different way, even if it's for 2 hours. I mean, if you want to go back to being serious, that's fine. But it's just giving people the joy, and even like how we were talking about, to just if you can't go bust past the barriers, I can get you a little closer to the
Yep.
border. So
Um,
we did get you a little closer and a little closer, each time, and it's like, oh, she's doing that. And I mean, even with my degree, some people now I've experienced that people have allowed me more permission because I have a degree in spiritual formation. So it's like, she knows what she's talking about. It's kind of not just, oh, it's Nutty Shonda. Now it's, oh, she went back and she got her master's degree and she's training to be a spiritual director. So it's like the seriousness of my academia and my career allows more freedom in my entertaining. So
Yeah, it gives you the credibility, but that's
yes.
not just a label. I can attest to that too, is
Mhm,
that, when someone sees some letters behind your name or
mhm,
something, but they
mhm,
see the depth of
mhm,
your reflection on these concepts that you've creatively brought to light. And I just think that's beautiful. And I think there's a lesson in that for the aspiring person who, may want to take you up on that permission slip and start to do some coaching and do some ministry work that way. You need to learn, you need to grow yourself, you need to
mhm,
maybe have the credentials
mhm,
to speak into someone's life. And so there's a lot to that, actually, so I admire you for doing that.
mhm.
You know what? Here's another question comes to my mind. What are some of the biggest mistakes that people do make when they're trying to pursue their purpose? When they're getting started with this, but they've made. What are those mistakes that you observe sometimes when someone's pursuing their calling?
Mhm. There are quite a few. I will try to keep it as short as possible. Number one is not knowing your why. Number two is not being prepared for criticism. Number three is thinking that everyone's going to understand and everyone's going to cheer for you. And it's kind of like an entrepreneurial journey if you want to like really get the real long list. Like I said, if you look at the life of Jesus, his mission was so pure, so wonderful, and he still faced criticism. He still faced a lot of misunderstanding. Um, so thinking that you're going to be immune because you're working for God is one of the biggest ones that I had to deal with. Like, but I'm working for you.
Yeah.
And I remember, uh, not, and not even, and there's some things, some practical things too, as well, because, we get into a realm where we're working for God and we're ministers. We forget that it takes money, or we don't want to think about money. And, we find ourselves being like, well, what's going on? It's like, hey, I had to learn that I had to charge, and it's like I felt very uncomfortable and I had to work through a lot of issues where that came from. And, I had to be able to face the criticism for charging. That was another criticism that I got. And it's like, you have to be able to, you have to be prepared. That's the one thing, because we think, like you said, Jesus said, go. And it's like, yeah, go. But, there was when he sat sat the disciples down and told them what they were going to face and gave them instructions. So get your instructions. That's basically what I would say. And it's a mission from God, but he wants you to use wisdom as well. Definitely, you
Absolutely.
have to have wisdom.
Yeah, you need to think ahead, and you need to take
Mhm,
responsibility to do the preparatory work on the front end, like what we've
mhm,
mentioned, and knowing your why, and having a very clear focus as to what that purpose is, and then you launch out
mhm,
and trust him
mhm,
for the results, like we talked about. Shonda, this has been so great. And I think you would just make a wonderful keynote speaker. You've done that kind of work, right? And you've spoken at conferences and encouragement, working with people. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to do is, I guess, encourage folks that if you need a keynote speaker, you've got a great message with a lot of material
mhm,
here that I think could be really helpful for groups and for, of really any size. Um, your all of your material is available on the website,
mhm.
shondacarter.com. And what would be your parting encouragement to our listeners here, just given all of the life, sort of the world experience now and the circumstances we find ourselves in? Give us some parting words here of encouragement about living authentically ourselves, and give us some encouragement from where you're at, facing the world as we see it today.
One of the things is that you are uniquely called to do what you can do. No one can do what you have been called to do. If someone else could do it, you wouldn't be here. That's just all there is to it. Number two is, even you don't have the right to criticize what God has created. So it's like a lot of times we talk about ourselves and, oh, who am I? Oh, I can't do it. Or, that was horrible. If God has called you to do it, even you don't have the right to, I say poop on it, sorry. But it's like I would, kick myself all the time and go, it wasn't good enough. Or I remember, okay, this is a very painful moment in my life, but I remember saying that I did not trust God because if you were smart, you would never choose someone like me. And that was like, that's when I realized, even I don't have the right to question God about me. So that's what you need to learn. It's like, I love God. I have some great times with God, but when he's serious, he's serious. And he was serious on that one. Even you don't have the right to criticize you because God has called you to do what God has called you to do. And you're kind of out of it. So that's my best advice that I give. That kind of cuts down on a lot of that horrible self-talk and keeps you going forward.
Shonda, I love it. It's great to meet you today. Thank you so much. Check her out,
Mhm.
shondacarter.com. Shonda, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much. I had such fun. Thank you.